Diplo are trying to add a bit of clarity and a bit of more focus to this debate. And this is exactly what today's discussion is supposed to do. So thank you to the organizers again, and thank you to all of you for actually joining today and contributing to this discussion. One more thing, quickly, speaking about what else we're doing at Diplo, we have been talking quite a lot about this notion of bottom-up AI and about the need to actually empower local and small communities to develop, use, and also preserve their own AI systems, again, in a bottom-up way, building on their knowledge and reflecting this knowledge in whatever systems they might be developing. So I'm also hoping you will talk a bit about this today and how this might be happening in Africa as well. And finally, we're also talking a lot about the need to have stronger African voices in the global debates around AI governance, since this is happening a lot these days. And on that note, we did publish a report a little over a year. It was called exactly this, Stronger African Voices in Digital Public Policy Debates. I'll be sharing the link, kind encouragement to anyone interested in this to have a look, but also we look forward to your comments and seeing how you might want to reflect in what hopefully will be a revised edition on this report. So again, Mwende, Kate, thank you for organizing this. Thank you to the speakers for joining. Thank you to the participants for joining, and I'm looking forward to the debate. And another kind encouragement to please look into bottom-up AI from Africa and for Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sorina. For now, to start us off, I'll invite Dr. Kate Kitao to start the session. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much, Mwende, Sorina, and the distinguished panelists whom Mwende will introduce in a moment. So you've seen the title on the impact of AI on the collection, exploitation, protection of privacy of data in Africa. And as Sorina has mentioned, this is a very timely topic because I don't know whether Walu, one of our panelists, will agree with me, but data is what AI feeds on. So we thought it would be very interesting to discuss the impact of the legislation, which is now quite widespread on the African continent, on the need to have sufficient African data captured, protected, and used in order to have AI applications and models which are very relevant to the needs of our continent and to be part of those who are able to make very productive use and exploitation of AI. So we joined the two topics on data protection, and we're very privileged to have experts in the areas of data protection, the areas of AI, and the area also of cybersecurity, which is also very topical in this emerging age of artificial intelligence. So Mwende, if you could just kindly give 1 minute bios on our 5 panelists, and then we can get started. I've decided, as in my powers of moderator, to harmonize we were going to have 2 panels, one on data protection and one on AI. But I think it would be a better use of time, given the number of panelists, to have one panel where we'll have questions on both areas, and then there'll be much more time for audience interaction. Kindly type your questions in the chat. We may be able to give a few of you privileges to ask your question in person, but most of the questions will be drawn from the chat. And Mwende and Boris will be working hard together to look at the emerging debate on chat and extract the very pertinent issues and bring them to the attention of the panel members for their wisdom. So please be active on chats. I know you're very many. We're expecting up to 300 participants. Those are the number that registered at the moment. I think I'm not sure I should look, but at the moment we have just under 100. So I think with time, there are going to be a lot more. So obviously this is a very interesting topic, and we'd like to give you as much chance as possible to interact with this distinguished panel. So Mwende, very brief bio so that we know who's in the room.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So we have Tyrus, you can wave, Tyrus. Yeah, Tyrus Muyaka Mao, he has over 13 years experience in handling cybersecurity and is a principal consultant at Leverage Experts GmbH. So Tyrus leverages on deep expertise in the to guide clients in achieving robust cybersecurity posture and mitigating complex risks. Yeah, that is Tyrus. Then we have John Walubengo. John, wave. John has a very happy spirit. He's always laughing and always smiling, but he has been teaching for a long time at the Multimedia University in Kenya. And in addition to that, he has been leading stakeholder consultations in emerging technologies, which will go towards revising the ICT policy, regulations, and the Act in Kenya. So John, that is John Walubengo. Then Shikoli, if I don't say everything, but he has, I'm trying to at the same time read, works at Serianu. Serianu is a well-known what do you call it, consultancy firm on cybersecurity. He has given himself to specialize in AI, so and especially AI in Africa. So we are looking forward to hearing from him. Then we have Mokhtar Yadale, and Mokhtar, yes, thank you, is a former minister for innovation, I think, and ICT, I hope I'm right, from Mauritania, and currently leading the global cybersecurity expertise group in Africa. So he has a lot of experience, especially in the AU. He was a senior fellow from AUC, African Union Commission, and has been a great fellow and a good friend of DiploFoundation. So welcome, Mokhtar. I think I have introduced everyone. Thank you.
I think there's Mercy. Mercy.
Oh, Mercy.
Yes.
Oh, I was looking for videos. Hi, Mercy. Okay, Mercy is an advocate, is a lawyer based in Kenya, and has litigated on cases that are very familiar to the cyberspace and cyber environment. One in particular, one that is popular is the one by Meta, and maybe she will tell us what she did with Meta. And whether they agreed or were fined or whatever. Yeah. So welcome, Mercy. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much, everyone. And okay, I'm trying to get my act together here. And my name is Catherine Getau. I usually assume everybody knows me, but I don't think that's true in the case of this audience. An academic for a quarter of a century, graduated with a PhD in artificial intelligence. I think that's something many people don't know, but that was in 1992, so I've forgotten everything. back to it now that we have been shown that it actually works. When at the time that I graduated, nobody believed in artificial intelligence very much, but thank God that, is it 40 years later, it has now proved its mettle and have done many things, but right now I'm a friend of Diplo and I'll be your moderator this afternoon. So we can get right into the topic. And the topic is really about the juxtaposition of data and artificial intelligence. And I know that when I graduated with AI, part of the reason why perhaps AI was not as successful as it is now was there wasn't enough data for it to feed on to build these very powerful and effective generative models, which we are now seeing leading to serious applications. So I'm going to start with data because we have very powerful data proponents with us in the room. And the first thing is not exactly the questions I sent you, but is data protection still relevant in the age of AI? And I'm going to jump to Mercy to begin with, just to comment on what she feels are the really emerging data issues now in the age of AI, maybe from an African point of view. Mercy, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, Kate, and thank you to Diplo for having me. So I feel like the best way to answer that question is just taking a minute to explore how AI is currently being deployed in the continent and the data protection concerns we see to that end. And I'll use maybe an example that may be familiar to people from different parts of Africa, and that's these mobile lending companies and their use of AI. So I'll give the Kenyan example. We have, the popular platforms like Tala, Branch, deploying AI to determine people's creditworthiness, but then also using some of the AI tools to deploy, be it automatic harassment of your contacts, to try and follow up on how to recover their debts from people who take debts from their platforms. So if you take a simple example such as that, and you see that from a user's perspective, where we need loans, we need money, so people are definitely going to subscribe to these services. But you don't realize that while you subscribe to those services, you're actually giving them consent to collect a wide array of data belonging to you, data belonging to other people. So that's the point at which data protection regimes step in to regulate just what data sets can you use in your deployment of AI. So to answer your question, the most express answer is yes, absolutely, data protection has a place for it. And the reason for this is that at the end of the day, despite the technology, we have to center the person and we have to protect the person. It's easy to think about AI as ChatGPT and other abstracts, but that's not the use we see locally. The uses we see locally of AI are uses that impact people. It's companies like the telecommunication companies using AI to determine whether to give this person a higher limit on their airtime or a lower limit. It's the banks using AI to determine how much money to give two people with the same income and maybe same set of particulars. How do you discriminate against one and give one a loan and deny one a loan? It's buildings using facial recognition software, and how then do you protect that data from falling into the hands of other people? So if you think about AI being a people-facing product, then definitely data protection has to take precedence, and we have to protect people's data, and we have to regulate how the machine learning is going to take place, but also what kind of products companies can opt to.
Hey, thank you very much, Mercy, for giving us those very practical examples of how data protection is still very important in the time of artificial intelligence. I'll jump to Walu now and say you are really involved in task forces which are showing the recognition, for example, of the Kenya government in its great interest in exploiting AI and making sure that Kenya is not left behind. And I'm sure that we have the same concern in most African countries. We want this technology. Now, given the risks that Mercy has pointed out, and also what Sorina said earlier, that somehow Africa is not generating the same amount of data, is not generating the same amount of content as other jurisdictions. So where are we going to get the data if we're going to have powerful AI applications? And is there any way in which you would temper the data protection legislation to continue to allow the emerging applications to get the data they need to do the kind of modeling that they need to do to be powerful? So Walu, maybe you could just comment a little bit on that.
Okay, thank you, Kate. From, will I say, high-level perspective, there is this sort of assumption that data protection and AI are at conflict. But if you look closer, you realize that the data that the data commissioner protects, and rightly so, creating restrictions around it, is a small section of data, basically personal data. But there is a whole lot of other data that really doesn't fall under personal data that I believe, as of now, is not regulated, and we are not exploiting it. If you think about data related to agriculture, soil fertility data about weather patterns in certain locations, data about what crop will do better in which regions, data about harvest yields over the last years. All that data is actually available in Ministry of Agriculture, but in physical forms. So when you think about lack of data, we shouldn't just think about personal data from a point of view of AI exploitation. For Africa, we need to focus more on non-personal data that is available but unlocked. It's not available it's not in a format that our innovators can exploit because it's in hard copies. And even when the Ministry of Agriculture tries to make it available, they present it in PDF form. And those in IT will tell you it's a hard nut to crack to start creating apps that can, pick and analyze PDF form. So the data for Africa is not enough, but I wouldn't blame the data commissioner for lack of data. I would rather look at it broadly and say that Africa, we don't have what the North is now calling a data governance framework that promotes open data, that encourages especially government ministries to really make their data available, which they are not. Now, back to the data commissioner, the personal data space, which is quite controlled, and that the lawyers will tell you it's rightly so because it is embedded in human rights issues. I will therefore not think about diluting the data protection regime in order to avail more data, because the data around our personal space is arising from human rights, and there are provisions around how you can exploit that data set type. And in our Data Protection Act, that provision does not really stop you from collecting personal data. It just provides parameters around how you can collect that data, in particular, allowing the data subject some form of control in terms of consent for you to collect it. And secondly, an obligation on your part to be transparent about your AI logic. In the event a decision is made that turns out to be harmful to me as a person, you as the innovator or as the enterprise should be able to understand your own models and how they arrived at that decision and defend it, so that the whole idea of AI comes with some form of responsibility. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Walu. I like that, responsible artificial intelligence. But just keeping to the subject of data, I'm turning to you, Mokta, because I think you had a visionary idea when you were at the African Union Commission, that this issue of cybersecurity and data protection goes beyond just our national legislation. And the Malabo Convention is a very good document. I actually have it with me here. But I'm sure there are many people Africans who don't know much about the Malabo Convention. So I'd appreciate if you could just summarize what it is and what it's for, and its relevance in this age of these emerging technology and new data challenges. Thank you so much, Mokta.
Thank you, Kati, and allow me first to, how can I say, to do a few comments before we start really dipping into this issue of Malabo Convention. First of all, I believe personally that at this point of time, before and even today, we haven't addressed properly the issue of data protection. Because the way we are addressing it is so candid and direct that it doesn't take into consideration really the whole ecosystem of data, what is actually happening. And let me just explain to me, because the way we are collecting data, which is actually very positive, the collection of data, the tremendous data that has been collected with the price of providing free services, is actually extremely vital for the development in technology, and specifically for the development of artificial intelligence. Some visionary somewhere have been said the only way to collect the tremendous amount of data from everyone around the world is really to provide, cookies. It's just free services such as Yahoo services, such as Gmail services, such as now WhatsApp. We have abandoned the telephone now. We are just talking about WhatsApp with the illusion that we are encrypted and nobody is stealing the data. No, but all of you, that there is a certain amount of people privileged around the world that can access those data. So we are putting laws in our space, our common space. We are putting laws and the regulations, but in fact, we haven't addressed the origin of the issue itself. Why the data are collected and how they are being used and when they are stored and how. Specifically, this could have been not a question 3 years ago, because you say, okay, this amount of data is very difficult to process, and as a single person somewhere else, a Delta guy somewhere in the desert doesn't affect me. But in reality, now with the artificial intelligence coming, it's becoming extremely easy to process those data and do with them whatever possible. And that brings us back way to the Greek time, where we start doing what is real and what is not real in the era of intelligence, artificial intelligence. The data you can use to do something with, right? Provide an output that we don't know if it is really real or not real, or true or not true. And this is where the philosophical questions and the metaphysical questions we are pushing now is how really we have to address the issue of data protection in this context. Free services versus giving part of our privacy, though not entire our privacy. This process, the strength and the intensity of which we can process this data, how we can misuse them for everything. We can make people talk, dance, where they are not the same people. We can make them say what they cannot say. We can even, with the combination of the Internet of Things, AI, over 5G infrastructure, remotely control everything through watches, through all those kinds of things. So it's kind of scary, but in the same time, it's good. Where is the good balance for everything? This is where we can, we need to look at that. And this is probably something that we Africans need to really start digging into that and be part of what we call the international dialogue that is taking place everywhere, forums and so on. Coming back to your word you have used as a visionary for the Malabo Convention. I wouldn't, how can I say, when we started really the Malabo Convention, it was motivated by two factors. One, the willingness of Africans to go into e-trade. And actually, I can say that Africans are probably the first one who thought about data economy, because today we see the open data system and the transhumance of data are actually very good in terms of improving the GDP. In India, for instance, it has increased the GDP by 5%. If you take the EU and the UK together, 1.5%, just by using what we call the open data and cross-border data between the different systems and so on, and that improves a lot. We Africans thought about that, but we thought it from trade point of view, because our issue was the intra-African trade. That is one of the questions we wanted to address at that point of time. But in the same time, we wanted to address the cyber security itself. And this is, and in doing the two, we say, oh, in between, we need to say something about electronic transaction. So this is why you see Malabo Convention has three components: the electronic transaction, the personal data protection, and the cybersecurity itself. And this is the unique convention in the world, actually, that put in place to all of that. And probably Africans are the first one to think about combining data protection, privacy, and cybersecurity together, which is actually now something that is very, very advanced in terms of thinking. Back in 2009, when we started doing that, we thought, okay, cyber, data protection, and then suddenly we put in between electronic transaction, and this is how we can end up with the Malabo. Malabo is a framework really that will allow data economy for Africans cross-border. And this is how it will help Africans to integrate. And as I mentioned, it will tremendously contribute to the economic growth specifically. Somebody is predicting that data economy will not allow growth in business exponentially, but for us Africans, it will certainly grow exponentially. So basically at the origin, the need was e-commerce, cybersecurity. Data protection comes in later on the top of that and become the center of the Malabo Convention. This is actually unique in the world now. Thanks God it has been ratified before people starting altering it, which is very important. Now it is it has entered into forces, and now anybody is free now to see if they have to adapt it to the context, taking into consideration whatever it is. But those who were thinking that you can modify something before really approving it legally was actually a bad approach. So I stop here, and I'll be glad to answer to any questions on this specific matter. But again, free services, the price of the free services is something we need to address, and we don't own our own data, and we have paid for it, the price of getting something for free. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mokhtar, for enlightening us that the brainchild behind the Malabo Convention was actually e-trade and the growth of the African data economy. And I think, again, this is still very pertinent from Walu's and Mercy's comments about how AI is going to grow and develop in Africa based on data, just as part of that data economy. Now, I'll jump to Bwana Shikoli, and I have not forgotten you, Tyrus, because the issue of cybersecurity is also coming in to this. We have been encouraged that there's huge potential for the growth of our economies through the exploitation of data through AI. So I'll start with Shikoli. Just maybe enlighten us on how both AI and this issue of data collection through various platforms, which has been free platforms, which has been raised by Mokhtar. How secure is our data in Africa, whether it's little or much? What opportunity is there, and also what concerns are arising as you do your work? What are you encountering as a major challenge? And then from there, I'll jump to Tyrus with really the same question, really enlightening us on what we need to do in cybersecurity area if this e-trade and data economy is going to become a reality, and if AI is going to be responsibly used in our African continent. So I'll start with you, Shikoli. Please go ahead. Are you muted, Shikoli? Okay, while we're waiting for Shikoli, maybe Tyrus, you can deal with your question, and then Shikoli, when you're ready, you just chip in. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Catherine, and I want to extend my deepest appreciation to Diplo and the team for organizing this very informative and insightful conversation. So I'll answer the question from two perspectives. So I've been in Dubai, the UAE, for the last 1.5 years, and still working in the realms of cybersecurity. But at the same time, I have very good knowledge and experience within an African perspective, having worked with several Pan-African companies, and of course, understanding the landscape quite well from a cybersecurity perspective. So as far as AI is concerned and cybersecurity, one thing I'll say is that having lived in one of the most adoptive countries as far as tech is concerned, there is quite a lot of data that is flying around. And to the extent that for the very first time, the UAE government is seeking to introduce GDPR-like law to try and manage the flow of data use and also the people who process that amount of data, because I think they've realized the potential for AI coupled with this amount of data that is being produced by different businesses is quite enormous, both for good use and also bad use. I mean, it cuts both ways. So what I've seen is that, on one hand, it's become super easy nowadays to develop what are known as exploits that are used in attacking systems. because AI has made us super lazy. You just feed it a prompt, and with the right prompts, you're able to generate what are called exploits, which look at vulnerability. So you're able to attack software through the assistance of generative AI. Then over and above that, there's been instances where companies have adopted AI-based or AI-driven products that have led to huge compromises. So for instance, I'll give you 2 examples that have actually come out within the last 2 weeks. There's a company that develops a HR recruitment application. And so what they decided is to wrap AI around it. And so it just goes through the CVs and even the profiles and is able to give a score as to which candidate is preferred to move to the next stage. So what happened in this instance is that there were people who were able to find a bug in that product and were able to exploit it and create a bias for candidates who are not qualified. And this actually made them get to the final leg of the interview. And some of the key franchises that were using this product were franchises like KFC. As of today, there's a paper that has been released by the Mohammed bin Zayed University, one of the institutions we are collaborating with. They've been able to actually duplicate handwriting as far as generative AI is concerned. So they're using neural networks and they were able to actually copy someone's handwriting based on the image that is fed to the AI algorithm. And again, this tells you just how far and the precipice is of how things can get nasty, as far as AI is concerned, if they're not well regulated and controlled. Now, based on these 2 instances, I think one of the key things that has always popped in my mind, even when I'm talking to clients and discussing these particular innovations, because people are very quick to adopt the next shiny thing. And this time around is AI. It's probably going to be AI for the next 5 years, is that we need to be very well aware of the dangers that lurk in adopting anything that has just come out of the blues, that has not been tested in the real world, and there's not enough data to confirm that it's actually secure. So awareness is very important. Then 2, it's also very critical that even in our policies, and especially in data privacy, governance, risk, and compliance, that we also strengthen the vendor risk management policy that tries to give either the vendors a self-assessment whereby they assess themselves against a given framework, and they can tell us if they are aware of the dangers of the product that is probably leveraging on AI. How do they develop what we call a kill chain? How do you prevent data from being leaked out there? Because like Dr. Kate rightfully said from the beginning, AI is only as good as the data it feeds. And several years later, we have this huge mountain of data that is just being ingested, and we're trying to make sense of it. And what I've seen, especially here in the UAE, is that right from your residence card, your ID, right to when you go and take your driving test, they just have your ID. And the data that is being ingested by the algorithms behind this can profile you, and they can more or less even sell this information to banks. They can sell them to driving schools. They can send them to hospitals to profile your lifestyle. And they're able to even predict, what sort of minor incidences might you be going to the hospital for. And again, this also now aligns now with the pharmaceuticals, because then again, they know if you're someone who's very keen with your lifestyle, they probably start pushing lifestyle geared, supplements, right? And so you see there's a lot of synergy that is being created from all these data points. And, what we call the matrix is getting closer and closer to it. And, it's just taking a form of its own. And I think that the same is going to happen to Africa. For me, in Africa, I think it's going to be less than a year. We're going to be having lots of these data points also being exposed either to generative AI or even other large language learning models that are coming up. And so I feel that the Office of a Data Protection Officer is doing a very good job in sensitizing the public, because I think the very first point is just to let people know, what does this mean? What does it mean for you in a very elemental space? What does it mean for you as an individual before we even start looking at as a population? So what does your data being out there and being used by these AI-driven innovations, what does that mean? And in the event that something happens to that data, that it's leaked or it's sold out, or the AI generates some sort of algorithm that is able to tap into your hospital data, and somehow someone gets a hold of it and is able to sell it out or expose you using that data, what are the precautions we can take towards that? So I think we are living in very interesting times. It almost feels like sci-fi. But yeah, the reality is right here with us, and I think it can only get either both interesting or can get worse than it can imagine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tyrus, for those very current examples. Shikoli, I'm glad to see that you're back with us, and I'm sorry I jumped in. It was because of time management, but please unmute yourself and address the question. We can't hear you yet. Shikoli, please unmute. He can't unmute. Can we have technical assistance, please, to enable Shikoli to unmute? So as we wait, I don't know, maybe AI has come in some way. And created a cyber risk. I'm so very sorry, Shikoli. We're so keen to hear from. Oh, here you are. Wonderful. Great. Please go ahead.
Good. Thanks for accepting. I think one of the key things that AI literally has done is it's kind of accelerated the digitization of specific businesses, and what that means generally is that you find now businesses want to collect a lot more data so that they literally can feed this data into models, and these models can probably help them kind of figure out, what is happening. They can predict. So if you're a barber, does it mean that you can be able to predict who's going to come to your barber shop the next week? In the African context, of course, there's a whole lot of AI implementations that are going on. Yesterday, I was talking to a gentleman who is automating detection of animals in the Mara Conservancy, where they're just taking pictures of elephants and they can actually be able to tell which elephant this is, how many kilometers it has covered and everything. And they're scaling. I think Kenya has, in the Mara, probably we have about 80 conservancies. So they've figured out how to scale themselves. Of course, as Dr. Olubengo mentioned earlier, the biggest challenge they're currently having is that the Kenyan government definitely has a lot of data, but that data is in formats that cannot easily be consumed. So they're trying to figure out how to do it. Going back now to some of the capabilities that AI gives, especially when you talk about generative AI, the fact that it has vision, the fact that it allows you to summarize large sets of data, it allows you literally to be able to quickly go through data and make sense of it. Definitely, it has now brought to fore some of the things that we need to do as a continent to be able to, of course, protect any personal data that is being generated, but at the same time, make sure that we can actually be able to utilize that data in a way that can return value to the people who need to use it. So one of the key things that I think I can easily say I've seen is that I'm seeing now businesses, African businesses, trying to figure out, okay, we need to make sure that we can get our DPIA or we can get our data privacy policies in place. But they're struggling to kind of understand how they actually go about generating data. So because they're struggling to figure out how they go about generating data, now what these new laws, the data privacy laws are doing is they're forcing these governments, or rather they're forcing these companies to go and document their business processes. It's forcing them to document, basically, if I am running a pharmacy, I need to be able to tell which data I'm collecting and what I'm collecting that data for, so that when it comes to giving a ROPA to the data privacy office, I can easily be able to kind of categorize what that data is. So as much as, yes, data privacy kind of came in to protect the businesses from basically giving away PII data and violating privacy, it's actually now becoming far much more critical for these businesses, because they've figured out once they collect that data, they can actually now start using it for other business. Basically, they can start using it for other business goals that they have, rather than just meeting their privacy. So as much as, yes, it might have sounded like it was a draconian rule and everything, I think what we are now seeing is that businesses now are using this as a chance for them to collect data, clean it up, and make sure that it's available so that they can use it for AI going forward. Of course, with the AI, there are other problems, which I think we'll be able to touch on in this conversation, because now, you see there's competition for GPUs. You're seeing there's competition. China cannot import GPUs from America. Europe, it's trying to get its hands on GPUs. So it's going to introduce other challenges, which I think that probably now African governments need to start thinking about, because it's no longer an issue of collecting data only. It's now becoming, do you have the hardware to actually be able to use that data and train your own models? And then how do you make sure that after you train those models, you can actually be able to serve them to basically do what we call inference, so that everyone can be able to use it. So it's turning out to be a very interesting time in terms of just where we are as African businesses or as African countries, and what some of the things that we need to do to ensure that even as AI becomes commoditized, we can actually be able to take advantage of it.
Okay, thank you very much for that enlightenment, Shikoli, about not only the risks, but the need to exploit this emerging opportunity provided by AI, and even provided by the response to the data protection legislation, where people start looking at what data they have and looking at it more seriously and thinking of exploiting it. Now, there's some interesting ideas that have emerged from all of you. And by the way, for the audience, please continue to put your questions in the chat. In 10 minutes or so, we will start having the more interactive session where you have an opportunity to ask your questions, some of them drawn from the chat. And if we're able, some of you may also be able to ask your questions in person. But please keep putting them on the chat. They are being recorded and noted. And there's a lot of information on the chat. Also, there's some links and also to other interesting material which may be of interest to the participants. So maybe since we just have a few minutes each before we go to the interactive session, what I'd really like to hear is if you had one piece of advice for African governments, what do we need to do to make sure that we are generating enough data, that we are managing it properly for exploitation, and also that we are not left behind in the area of AI. So I know we have people here who are in the area of capacity building. We have consultants, we have lawyers, we have people looking at it from different perspectives. So please tell me, if you were going to record your one ask and say, this is what we need to do going forward, if we're going to be the AI continent and the data continent of the future, what would you tell us to do? And I'll start with Mokta, and I'll be calling on you one by one. You have like 2 or 3 minutes each to just tell us what do we need to do to make sure that we profit from.
I came from the point of view that every country has enough data at his size, but together, all of us as African, we have a huge amount of data. So if I had to advise the African governments, and I say plural, I didn't say one government, because that is nowhere, it's not, we have no more the luxury in this digital era to act as one individual. We have to act together. And That togetherness is that make us really strong in terms of volume and data generating. So my advice then will be approve one data policy and have it active in all countries, one continental data policy for all.
Sorry, thank you. Very short, very clear. I now jump to Chikoli. I know you've just been talking, but what is your one piece of advice for us?
No, I think what I'll probably say is that AI is a new tool that all of us have that we can be able to use. The whole world is trying to figure out how to use it. So I kind of think that we are having a race, ideally, to try and figure out how to use AI to be able to achieve what is it that we need to be able to achieve. So basically, anybody literally out, even on this call, needs to think about, what will happen if a computer starts having what I want to call cognitive skills, just like human beings. How does it change the world around us? And once you start having those thoughts, then it really, really makes us start thinking, what are some of the things that need to be changed in society? Because as much as we have, Africa has always been left behind. I kind of think that the fact that computers are going to have cognitive skills allows us to be able to deal with some fundamental problems that we've had as a continent, starting with things like education, starting with things like medicine. I just heard yesterday there was an interview by the CEO of NVIDIA, where he said, ideally, now with AI, you can go from text to protein and from protein to text. Now, if you just kind of imagine what it means that the healthcare is literally going to change, which is probably one of the most expensive things in the African continent. So my thinking is that we really, really need to understand, what does computers getting cognitive skills mean for the continent, and how do we go about harnessing this new skill that, or rather, how do we go about harnessing this new tool that has become available to us? I think it's going to really, really change Africa, and if we jump on the bandwagon right now, we will actually probably benefit from it more than probably even the Western countries do.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that task, that we need to work out the change now that computers have cognitive skills and see how to respond appropriately. Let's go to Walu, your ask.
Okay, thank you, Kate. For me is to say open data. I know this prominent Kenyan Professor Ndemo started that conversation about 15 years ago, but we didn't, make progress on that front, simply because the focus was on the servers that are hosting the data, but not the pipeline that ensures that those servers continue to get fresh data sets on a continuous basis. Secondly, the data collection that we have is not in formats that our innovators or the people building models can really exploit. So in a nutshell, it's about data governance. And that ties very closely with open data, because even within government ministries, you find one ministry has data that the other one needs, but you want to have protocols before you share. Or there's resistance to share, actually, because there is no protocol of how to share it. So within nation, data sharing is not happening. Now you can imagine what Mokta is wishing for, intra-country data sharing. It will never happen. So we've got to first split the silos within countries, and then thereafter it becomes easier to do it across countries. So data governance for me is a big thing, and within there is, of course, capacity building. Thank you.
Okay, an academic always takes more, so I had at least 4 things for the one: data governance, open data, data formats, and building. I'm going to give the lady the last word. So Tyrus, it's your chance to give us the one. You can have more than one since Walu has already broken the mold. But what would be your priorities right now if Africa is going to be the AI continent of the future?
Thank you very much, Dr. One of the things that I think we first need to do are the fundamentals. I would really hate for us to get left. Remember, we had the .com bubble that came, and then we came with the Silicon Savannah, and we thought this is it. This is our chance as Africans. Then I think we made a leap. We frog leaped in as far as payments is concerned, and we led the world in that. So if we can replicate that innovation as far as AI is concerned, then I think we stand a chance to compete at a global scale. But I also feel that, I'd ask governments to just get the fundamentals right. Let's just get connectivity to the last mile. Let's get people literate enough to understand what AI is, because I would hate to assume that people will leapfrog from not knowing what a computer is to what a large language model is. We need to just get rid of, that gap in between. That vacuum needs to be filled. At the same time, I think there's quite a lot of work happening at the regulatory space. And I think if we can now tailor that to within the African space, that would be greatly helpful, because then we don't always have to borrow from, GDPR, from HIPAA, or from wherever. We can just have homegrown Africa-led regulatory frameworks that can actually be followed by investors who are coming from different parts of this world. And lastly, I think we also need to avoid taking the Kool-Aid. And what I mean by this is that let's not just get lost in the hype. Let's just look at what the opportunities really present for AI as a continent. Because we've seen this happen, especially with this whole unicorn stages for startups. So I'd really hope that this time around we take a step back and just interrogate it quite almost at a philosophical level, so that we can come up with products that are very sustainable and that are actually usable by the global village, so that we can also now be the rising star of AI innovation to the world. Thank you.
Sorry, I was having problems unmuting. Yes, so yes, very pertinent. I like that we still have to focus on the fundamentals. People need the infrastructure, they need the devices, they need the capacity building to exploit. So thank you for bringing us down to earth, Tyrus. And Mercy, I promised you'd have the last words. So please tell us.
Thank you, Kate. My one piece of advice I don't know if you can hear me, but my advice to the Kenyan governments would be to pay attention to the back end. And what I mean by this is to pay attention to the training of algorithms. Right now, the way the world is divided in terms of AI and deployment of algorithms is that the big companies that have heavily invested in AI belong to Silicon Valley, but those big companies outsource their work to African countries to do the training of the algorithms for them. So the situation we have is that you have workers in Kenya, Uganda, South Africa. Recently, we've had Sierra Leone as well, training algorithms for big tech companies and other European-based companies. But at the same time, even the conversation on this call was, we don't have either the capacity to train algorithms or we don't have the data. So there's a funny divide that has come up where we are doing the labor, but at the same time, we're not doing the labor for ourselves. And that's because of the skills gap, but also because of the data gap. So we need to start paying attention to that end. And it's interesting that, as Mercy was saying earlier, I'll introduce maybe some of my work is litigating around algorithms and fair use of algorithms and the relationship between digital rights and how algorithms can violate that. And one thing we've learned is that when training of algorithms is done on the continent, on the African continent, it doesn't come as a dignified work. It doesn't come as a professional work. It comes as very broken up pieces of work in terms of data annotation, data curation, data labeling, and it's all given to different parties. So you're feeding into a machine, all of it is machine learning, but it's broken up to a point where it's impossible to make sense of it. So when you want to deploy the same systems for yourselves, we find ourselves saying there's a skills gap, like our companies and our youth are not able to train the algorithms because they don't have the skill gap, because the work was given to us in a very broken up way, and we weren't able to transfer that skill set. So in negotiating for these labor contracts with these companies, I think it's important that our governments really fight for the skill transfer, but then also fight for algorithms that put Africans and their culture and their information first. We have a situation where Africans are training algorithms that don't even recognize maybe the local context. They don't recognize what's local to us, what's important to us. If you look at the examples like Lepala AI in South Africa, who are using African languages to train machine models, those are the people who are coming up to step in the gap and say, okay, we can have algorithms that protect Africans even in these platforms, because Africans are left out. So my advice is definitely just pay attention to what's happening in our countries in terms of what big tech is doing in terms of training of their algorithms, and then leverage on that. We're saying we have a data problem, we're saying we have a skills problem. What can we do with what we have to solve those two ends of the problems? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mercy. Thank you for reminding us of the work that Africans are doing. And I think also the data Africans are releasing to platforms which are neither owned nor hosted in our jurisdiction, which I think is a point that Mokhtar raised, is that the huge data collection has been through 3 platforms. And most of these are not African platforms, but Africans are releasing the data that they do generate to those particular free platforms. And they are part of the learning that has taken place, the information that they have released individually. Now, I think it's time to allow, I see we've lost at least 15 of our participants. So I think it's really important to just allow the audience to begin to interact. They are raising very good points on chat, and I'll be handing over to Mwende shortly to pick out some of those questions and comments to raise them with the panel. I can see there's also Tangai, who wishes to make her point, so has raised the hands. So maybe Guy Mwende, can you allow for Tangai to ask her question? Can she be, it's he, sorry, be unmuted so that the question can be raised from the audience?
Okay, I'll ask the technical team to unmute her.
So as we're waiting for Tangai to be given the floor, is there a burning question, Mwende, on the chat?
Okay, there are several questions on the chat. I'll start with the first one that was asked. The question is from Shola Odipo. with the decentralization that is being brought about by the advent of Web 3.0, will the issue of data protection issues be compounded? How can this be mitigated? I don't know whether you've gotten the question.
Sorry, there was a lot of echo. Maybe repeat.
Okay. So the question is, with the centralization that is being brought about by the advent of Web 3.0, will the issue of data protection issues be compounded? How can this be mitigated?
Okay, is anyone able to take that? I can, please, can Tangai? Oh, she's unmuted. So as Tangai is asking her question, who would like to take that question about Web 3.0? Yes, Walu. So
Yes.
Yeah, just go ahead.
Thank you, Kate. My understanding of Web 3.0 is about blockchain. And actually, the way blockchains are designed is to give more control to the individual. So I do not believe that Web 3.0 solutions would conflict with data protection. In fact, they would assist the principles of data protection because they give power to the user to dictate what portion of the data that they want another third party to access. And this is not theoretical. I mean, Estonian government is famous for having the so-called X-Road, which is a blockchain solution that facilitates personal data storage and usage within the principles of data protection. So Web 3.0 goes hand in hand in supporting data protection principles. Thank you. Kate, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I was just saying that thank you, Walu, for that answer. And if the person who asked it is content, you can accept it. If not, you can interact more on the chat. Tangai, you are able to unmute yourself now. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I thank you all the distinguished guests and the participants here present. For me, I'm just actually reading it from the European perspective and my kind of ardent monitoring of the developments in this, having participated in this sort of a platform for AI, DiploFoundation debates and discussions. And it seems as if the window of opportunity has already probably gone apace for us in the African South of the geopolitical divide, and artificial intelligence development is actually still promising very positive outcomes, but at the same time, its negative impacts will reverberate through, and I would say, all the facets of life, presenting and posing threats and risks to the very existence of the African genome itself. So as our eminent Professor Dr. Lumumba always say that in most cases, Africa, we are always there to catch up when we have already been discussed and we have not had any kind of contribution to the actual developments at the tables. So my question was the essence of time within our global South as the African continent. When can we actually start to stimulate the momentum for our active participation in the actual AI designing table? Yes, we are good and we know very well we can identify all those dangers, threats, potential dangers that we are likely going to suffer. But when can we actually take that sort of diplomatic momentum for us to have our own common AI policy as a global continental body itself, as an international actor, and a member of the G7 community itself, I think that is something that would be maybe very, very essential, that we get some kind of a clear pathway to that kind of diplomatic platform for us to actually, put our act together, or just to harness the debates as they are going along, so that we won't be the beneficiaries of, so-called foreign investors bringing employment and that. When can we have the nationalistic African perspective policy on AI, as we have got the African Free Trade Continental Agreement? I think that was a major development which we all actually cherish and celebrate up to this point. It's a welcome development within our humanity.
Kate, you're muted.
I said, I think Proctor would be very able to take Tangai's question. Thank you, Tangai, for that question about when practically. Can we see having...
yeah, I can. Do you want me to go now?
Yes, go ahead.
No, it's very quick and sweet. Just to let the audience know that the African Union Commission back 3-4 years ago has created an African Union artificial intelligence working group or expert group. I can't recall exactly. And that the AUC has already have the African Union framework for artificial intelligence. The African Union, through the Department of Science and Technology, has adopted a strategy on AI, right? So the group is functioning. I don't know, I'm not up to the date now, how is it, but recent information had that they are actually working on that framework and strategy, and the group is there. So when, I don't know, but if really the community can push, the fact that the community seems always to be detached kind of the African Union, and without sending them and writing them or pushing them or pushing through their representation about issues that are global and specifically we educated people, if I may say, right? We need to get ourselves involved. Watching those people doing what, deciding on those things, specifically through sometimes incompetent people, that is bad. We as people need to be involved in what is happening there, and this is our responsibility toward ourselves, toward our future generation. Right? Push, propose, at least that is the minimum thing we can do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mokhtar, for enlightening us that there are frameworks, that there is a working group at the African Union level, and challenging us to not only apprise ourselves of these instruments and the work being done at the working group, but also to push for practical action, for it to move from documents and discussions to practical action. We really cannot afford to be left behind yet again. Thank you, Tangai. Mwende, we have about 15 minutes left. So burning questions, either you can raise your hand or we'll continue picking questions facilitated by Mwende and Boris from the chat.
Okay. A question by Kaja, sorry if I pronounce it wrong, Halbag Adu, asks, what expectations do you have for African universities in ensuring responsible AI? Then I'll ask also the second question from Bruno Jensen. Any interesting examples of governments training AI models, or most likely fine-tuning based models in-house to leverage possibly citizen, taxpayer sensitive data? What would prevent governments from doing so? Technology expertise, concerns about data privacy, leakage. I hope I have pronounced. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for those two. So I'll throw them to the panel. We don't have a government representative. I know, Alu, maybe you've interacted a bit with government, but maybe you can just give if you have any knowledge of an African government that has actually trained or made an AI application. And then there was a question about universities and the responsible use of AI. So anyone can jump in at this stage.
Okay. Let me go first. In Kenya, yes, there are private sector proposing solutions to government that are AI related, but I believe they are, should I call them rudimentary, like building chat boxes to support customer care desks. We do not yet sort of, in Kenya, that is, having government procuring AI solutions that go deep into what we want government to be doing. For example, AI in healthcare, AI in precision agriculture, AI in transport. That hasn't happened. What is stopping that from happening? I go back to what I mentioned earlier. Data. The data in government settings tends to be siloed and not in the correct format, such that even if they wanted to exploit it from an AI perspective, there's quite a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of converting that data into a format that can then be exploited. But more than that, ensuring that subsequent versions of the same data keep coming. Because AI doesn't make sense if it's based on data sets that are 10 years old. So there's a whole data governance framework that is lacking in government that then makes it impossible to make use of these AI solutions. The reason big tech is successful with AI is because the data they are collecting is up to date to the second. Contrast that with our National Statistics Bureau. They have data, yes, but how old is it? So if you're building an AI solution on, let's say, Kenyan census data that was taken 3 years ago, how really useful is that? So we don't have a framework that guarantees a constant supply of current data, and subsequently that frustrates any AI developments. At the university level, I think the question was, how do we make sure that we have capacity and responsible use of AI? I come from the university. I think our biggest problem, and I know responsible AI is a big thing at international level, but for us, yes, it's important, but we have other bigger problems. We don't even have capacity yet to the level we need for just AI. The curriculum we have on AI is not factoring in new developments that have happened over the last 2-3 years. So we have a capacity gap of AI within the context of modern technologies, whether it is these GPUs, cloud services, large language models, etc. So we have a problem in just creating the capacity on AI development. Before now, we even fine-tune it to say, okay, what is responsible and what is not responsible. Sometimes I feel we are drawn into fighting the global north wars and then we forget our own maturity levels, which we should be developing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that comprehensive answer. I can see that Juan Diego Martin Soto has had his hand up for a while. So please, I'd ask the technical team to give him, to unmute his mic. Are you ready to share, Juan?
Yeah, well, thank you. My question is related to the impact of generative AI latest developments on jobs in Africa. Which are your views, specifically for annotation tasks that have been somehow mentioned? So do we expect this to be a vector of job creation, more specifically in augmentation and automation of tasks? Is there going to be a net creation or a net loss? Preferring jobs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Juan. Mercy, do you want to take that, or any other panelists can chip in? The impact of AI on jobs in Africa are they going to grow or diminish?
Before Mercy, maybe I can throw in my 2 cents.
Okay. As Mercy prepares, then go 2 cents, please.
Yeah. And this is in line with what Mercy mentioned earlier, that the developed North is creating AI jobs for us down here in the South, but they're lower level jobs. We are not, as Africans, involved. If you look at AI as a value chain, our contribution is at, should we call it, the retail level. We are annotating, we are labeling data sets that are coming from the North. So our contribution is labor intensive and less paying, so to speak. We need to sort of create capacity so that the developed North can also engage us in building the foundational models, in creating algorithms, which then makes us the owners of the AI solutions rather than the labor that contributes to the profits of the owners. Yes, the jobs we have in that space now are, $2 an hour, $5, for a large population is useful. But when you think about it, it could be better if our labor was developed at such a level where we can get machine learning engineers being contracted by the big tech to build these solutions. We haven't reached there yet. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I throw my 1 cent, not 2 cents?
Yeah, sure. Mokhtar, go ahead.
Just quickly to respond in a plain English. AI will make jobs disappear only there is no strategy behind it. And I explain myself. If really in the era of artificial intelligence, jobs don't get lost, they get transformed, redirected, re-evaluated. The example of 100 people cleaning the solar panel in the power energy sector, and you bring the artificial intelligence to do that through robots, and augment the efficiency of those solar panels, people will think that those 100 people who are working on those fields will be lost. But in fact, they become the cleaners and the maintainers of those robots. So if we strategize in using the artificial intelligence properly, by bearing in mind that they are using them here for efficiency, but those who are performing those tasks are being transformed elsewhere, we will not lose anything. This is the prediction, actually, that most of the people think that is going to happen. I stop here.
Okay, and I can see there are various comments on that which are arising in the chat. I think Mercy has dropped off, so I won't press. Maybe we have only very few minutes, but I can see that there was a lot of interest, and there are many questions which are not addressed. I'm sure there's a way in which this discussion can continue on the Diplo page. I hope all the information that participants are kindly sharing is being captured. But for now, I'd just like for a parting shot from each of the panelists. So I'll start with Tyrus, then Shikoli, Walu, Mokhtar, and if Mercy is still with us, I'll also give her an opportunity. So Tyrus, a parting comment after listening to everyone and to the questions from the participants.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kate. First of all, very interesting both from the panelists and questions from the audience. I think for me, it's let's keep having these conversations and let us keep asking those hard questions. Let's learn from our mistakes as far as innovation is concerned, and let's not get entangled in going around in circles, trying to probably figure out solutions that perhaps will not be applicable, not just to us, but to the world as far as AI is concerned. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Tyrus. Walu?
Just to thank Diplo for this opportunity. I've also learned a lot from the panelists and, of course, from the flow. My parting shot will be that let's strive to have African context data or to open it up. I believe the data is there, but largely in the wrong formats. Let's strive to have African data so that we can have AI solutions that serve our needs. Thank you.
You're muted.
Yes, I'm saying, Shikoli, I'd like your parting shot.
Good. I think I happened to be around in 1993, 1994 when the internet was introduced to the African market. And I could tell that there's something that was going to change. I'm seeing that happening. And I think the critical thing is for us to look at the African internet journey and try and figure out what worked and what didn't work, and how do we make sure we get it right this time. And it just happens that I think the whole world is at the same place right now as far as AI is concerned. So I'm really looking forward to see, forums like this, which are discussing this as early as, this almost been a year since AI came into light. Basically, everybody picks it up. So I would really like to see how we jump onto this quick and make sure that there's no huge gap, or the gap that is there, we're trying to close it as quick as possible, because I think we can. So I'm glad to be part of this Diplo conversation, because I think this is the only way we are actually going to, make sure that the gap between the other countries and the African countries is not as big as it was initially when we had the internet. So thank you for inviting me for this. I'm looking forward to more conversations of this type. You've muted.
Mokhtar, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm just the issue of extinction and existing in the of AI risks. Africans need to address them properly, collectively, and together. We need to participate into the debate that is of our concern. Some say that Africa is the future of humanity. The humanity started with Africa, will end up probably Africa will be the future. There is a lot of thinking saying that the future is in Africa. Resource point of view, demographic point of view, all of that make Africa, pushing itself. All we need is to have people who really will address the right questions, the right issues, in the right context. Definitely, we need a unified continental approved policy on issues related to data. And hence, consequently, it will be same thing with artificial intelligence. We need to understand one thing, that our own opportunity, the only opportunity we do have to come to be equal to other people who were some sort of dominating Africa, is really to engage with them in the new era, new digital era, because we are all starting together. And I always say that we have missed the opportunity of industrialization. We end up colonized. We miss the opportunity of digitalization. We will be dominated forever. I stop here.
Okay, thank you for that salutary ending, Mokta. I think Mercy is not with us anymore, but we are really grateful, first of all, to Mwende, who did most of the organization. Thank you so much. We thank Sorina, who took time to give us our opening statement. I thank the panelists, Mokta, Tyrus, Walu, Mercy, and Shikoli, for giving of your time and your wisdom. And this is what we really need. We need Africans speaking to other Africans and inspiring us, enlightening us, guiding us. So as Mokta has said, we will not be once again be followers and left behind. We have an opportunity, and I believe we're going to take it up. And I really want to thank each and every participant who has joined at various times, and especially those of you who have stayed until the end. This webinar was organized by the DiploFoundation office in Nairobi, Kenya. You can go to the DiploFoundation website, where you will find a lot of information, including a micro site for the African fellows and issues. And this is a place where you can go. We will be holding a similar webinar quarterly. So the next one will be sometime to be advertised between April and June. And I believe you can continue to tell us the things that interest you, and we will organize. I'm sorry for your 4 minutes, which I have taken over the time, but I thank you once again for participating, and we will continue to contact you, and we look forward to being with you in the near future. Thank you so much, and please clap for yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.